Welcome to the second day of Freight Week STL 2024. I'm Mary Lamy, Executive Vice President of Multimodal Enterprises for Bi-State Development. In today's session, we're going to focus on investments being made in ports located along the Mississippi River and Missouri River waterways, and how advancements at the Port of New Orleans are positively impacting ports in the St. Louis region and Kansas City. We'll learn how the connectivity and collaboration between the three regions will help support continued growth in both traditional barge traffic and container-on-barge services and intermodal operations in the Ag Coast of America. Our featured panelists include Brandy Christian, President and CEO, Port of New Orleans, Dennis Wilmsmeyer, Executive Director, America Central Port, and John Stevens, President, CEO, Port KC. Welcome, everyone. We're going to start with asking each of you to introduce yourself and your organization. Be sure to give our audience an idea of where your facilities are located. Brandy, let's begin with you.
It's a pleasure to be joining each of you this morning. I'm Brandy Christian, President of the Port of New Orleans. And as our name says, we're here in the New Orleans region on the lower Mississippi. We are one of 32 ports here in Louisiana, but as you can imagine, we have the largest public footprint here in the Port of New Orleans, covering 3 parishes with facilities that have over 24 berths, 20 million square feet of cargo handling facilities, 2 cruise terminals, and about 2,500 acres of industrial real estate, as well as the ownership and operations of the New Orleans Public Belt Railroad, which is a short line that connects to the 6 Class 1 railroads that connect here in the New Orleans Gateway. But really, we serve as the entry point into the Mississippi River that serves as a gateway into all of the ports feeding the heartland of the Mississippi River.
Okay, Dennis, now it's your turn.
Thank you, Mary. And we're at America Central Port District. We're located in the St. Louis metropolitan area on the Illinois side of the river. We're a little bit smaller than Brandy's port at the Port of New Orleans. We have about 1,200 acres of property, 2 million square feet of warehouse space, about 70,000 square feet of office space, but we also operate about 200 apartments, which is not normal for most port districts. We actually are considered a landlord port. We're not an operating port, and in that we hire operators who actually unload the barges, the rail cars, and the trucks for us that come in here to the port. We move about 3 million tons of product each year by barge, and all those commodities are valued at over $1 billion annually.
John, you're up. Please introduce yourself and your organization and where your facilities are located.
Yes, thank you, Mary. John Stevens with Port KC. We're the Port Authority of Kansas City, Missouri, and we're located in the Kansas City metropolitan area, right between Kansas and Missouri. Our port district is a little unique, and just like our operations, we encompass the entire city limits of Kansas City, Missouri as a port district. We operate a bulk goods port terminal in just west of downtown in the West Bottoms, the Parson Port Terminal, and we are developing a 500-acre intermodal port, the Missouri River Terminal, to the east. We also operate an 1,800-acre former air base as a rail and trucking intermodal center. And how we're a little unique is also we do urban redevelopment, land reclamation, and large-scale projects for jobs and opportunities. So we run and have partnered in the private sector with almost 9,000 acres of mega sites of manufacturing and logistics projects. And we have recently redeveloped a 55-acre riverfront right on the Missouri River at the kind of the end of Main Street of downtown Kansas City, and turn that into a new neighborhood. So we have 1,500 apartments and have recently announced another $900 million in development on the Missouri River of a mixed-use development anchored by the recently opened CPKC Stadium, which is the first stadium purpose-built for a women's professional soccer team. So we're very excited. We're very diverse, but our roots and our heart are in the logistics partnerships that we have here in the region.
Brandy, we understand the Port of New Orleans container-on-barge service recently set a new record. Tell us a little bit about those operations and how your record-setting growth impacts ports right here in the St. Louis region.
The Port of New Orleans container-on-barge service is a partnership with Ingram. It was formerly owned by Seacord, now with Ingram. And it's a partnership that moves on average 30,000 containers, or actually TEUs, with the Port of Baton Rouge and to Memphis and St. Louis, and then to New Orleans. Through that partnership, on average 30,000 TEUs. And just this last year, we celebrated our highest year of movements with 20,500 containers moved since the service started in 2016. And that service really is the largest network in the United States, moving containers by barge all the way from New Orleans up into the heartland. And what's exciting about the service is that obviously, as we started this service in 2016, it has expanded over time. Not only the environmental benefits that we have seen from the service, but really the growth that it has brought with the ocean carriers really taking attention, and shippers beginning to understand that it's a real alternative to intermodal services, not just rail and trucking, but that the Mississippi River really is an option for moving containers.
Dennis, how is America's Central Port likely to benefit from the growth at the Port of New Orleans, and what investments are you making to help facilitate future growth?
Oh, great question. And so, a lot of people think all these ports are separately, just kind of out there and they're working on their own and they're not partnering with one another. That's not the case. So there are a lot of facilities up and down the river system that partner either through good relationships with one another through the ports themselves or the operators. And so in Brandy's case, in our case, Ingram, formerly Seacord or SCF, that was a recent purchase there. They actually operated our facility as well. So there is a lot of commonality between the ports, and what they've done, what SCF has done up and down the river system in the past with operations through Memphis and Baton Rouge with this container-on-barge service and on down to New Orleans, they also used to do here. And it's one of those things now that we're working with Ingram to hopefully get reestablished here with that container-on-barge operation. There's a lot of commodities that move out of the St. Louis market and into the St. Louis market that can go by the river system, and it's just a matter of education, and that's really where we've worked with the Port of New Orleans in the past. From an investment standpoint here at the port, we just continue to put a lot of money into our roadways, the infrastructure system, and into our two river harbor facilities because we want that efficiency. The more efficient we can be here at the port, the more opportunities there are, and the really the education piece for shifting some of that transportation from rail or truck over to the river harbor system.
John, Port KC and the ports in the St. Louis region share supply chain connectivity via both I-70 and the Missouri River. Talk to us about any collaborations you have with the St. Louis region and the relevance and importance of the link between your ports and regions.
Yeah, really, really great question. The bookends of Missouri, of St. Louis and Kansas City are vital, and they're connected both by our Class 1s, by the Missouri River with, Maritime Highway M29 and our I-70, our trucking. And, the Port KC and the Kansas City ports and our facilities, we're further west, we're further north. The Missouri River is a little more emergent in a lot of our tonnage and our material growth and our container on barge work. And that's really where we lean on the partnerships with St. Louis and New Orleans and really all of the kind of Midwestern port authorities to really raise, pun intended, to raise the tide, raise all ships by sharing a lot of these great ideas and the value of waterborne logistics and how important the Mississippi and Missouri are to connecting through the Port of New Orleans. And St. Louis is a major piece of all of that. And it's helped us. This past year, Kansas City we've had incredible success with logistics, but mostly rail and trucking. But we also are setting some record tonnage with our ag commodities and ag products on the river, and being able to share that story and have our partners in St. Louis continue to amplify that story has led to things such as the state of Missouri this past session gave record-breaking grants and funding for ports in Missouri. And we were the recipients of a grant to build a new dock and to build new roadways to really open up what we think will be an incredible piece of the puzzle here with the Missouri River Terminal, of having truly a large-scale water-based intermodal for the first time in Kansas City. And those ideas and those sharing and that collaboration with St. Louis, we wouldn't be where we are without that partnership.
Excellent. Dennis, America's Central Port recently joined other ports in the St. Louis region and the St. Louis Regional Freightway in supporting the Port of New Orleans' request for funding for the new Louisiana International Terminal. Help our audience understand why ports here in America's heartland would support federal funding going to a project in Louisiana.
No, it's another great question, Mary, because without it, all these ports, again, work together, and it's almost seamless in many respects. But the commodities that we're able to bring into the port here flow to New Orleans and vice versa. A lot of those commodities coming in at the Port of New Orleans are making their way upriver to, in a very cost-effective manner, to all these ports here. So it is very much a hand-in-glove relationship there. America's Central Port is located just south of the confluence of the Illinois, Missouri, and Mississippi rivers that all come together. We're the first public port located just below that confluence. And because of that, we're really the mouth of the funnel. And all those commodities come from the Midwest to one point right here, and then make their way downriver to the Port of New Orleans. So it's only natural for us to support what Brandy is doing there at the Port of New Orleans in terms of, especially from a container and cargo commodity perspective, and building that new international or intermodal terminal facility for them because it benefits them, but it also benefits us here in the Midwest.
Brandy, give us an update on the Louisiana International Terminal project's funding support and timing.
Certainly, I'd love to. And first of all, I really, to echo the comments both from John and Dennis, would like to thank each of you and thank Mary for your support. We recently received an infra and mega grant from the federal government for the Louisiana International Terminal for $300 million in total for the development of the container facility. And what was so exciting about that announcement was it was the largest federal grant ever awarded to a container terminal in the history of the United States, DOTD. And I think that really speaks volumes to, one, the need for another gateway in this country, but also really a lot of the feedback we got was the support that we received from the heartland, from St. Louis, from Illinois, from Kansas City, from Arkansas, from Tennessee. It was a recognition that the Mississippi River really was a gateway, and that the agricultural communities relied on one another to be successful. Really was at the heart of that application. And to your point, Dennis, the container-on-barge service is a good example of that. But also, we really look at New Orleans almost like an international airport. It really is a hub and spoke system. And we've seen that success, obviously, in our break bulk and bulk commodities, both going northbound and southbound. Probably 90% of our break bulk goes straight to barge and goes up the river system. And, container on barge, that is obviously across the country is a big effort. It's been more of an education process. I think the network we've been able to grow is an example of being able to, if we can make it work, the Mississippi River is the best chance of making that work because of the connectivity and the amount of agriculture and commerce that is moving on this river. We absolutely can make that work. And also with the Class 1 connections that we have, is, John mentioned, it's important to note with a New Orleans gateway and then having gateways in St. Louis and areas like Memphis, being able to connect that rail intermodal has been huge. So that the project Louisiana International Terminal really has been decades in the making. It's been much needed for a long time. So we're very excited on the progress. So just an update, we're about 2/3 into the permitting process. We submit our final documents and studies in the next, probably next month. They have about a year, Army Corps for the 408 to do the process, finish up the processing of the permit. That would put us into 2025 to receive the permit if successful. And we put ourselves on a 3-year construction time period with the goal of having our first berth open in 2028. The facility is designed about 400 acres, 3 berths, any size of vessel that the river can handle. As you know, the lower Mississippi has already been dredged to 50 feet. So we're very excited to be able to handle the largest vessels here in the lower Mississippi. The project is budgeted at $1.8 billion, which we have successfully raised. We are in partnership with Ports America and TIL, which is a operating arm of MSC Shipping. So we're very excited. We have the support of the state and now the federal government and really key operators and ocean carriers that I think believe in the vision that you all have talked about, not just here in the lower Mississippi, but really the opportunity in the Midwest and the St. Louis Freightway.
John, we understand that you also received funding last year towards the improvement and growth of not one, but 2 Missouri River ports in Kansas City. Tell us about those projects and any other investments you are making to grow your operations on the inland waterways.
Yes, we're very excited. First, we're enthusiastic supporters of New Orleans and our partners there because they really are the gateway to everything upriver and what we're trying to accomplish here. So one of our biggest goals is to continue the bulk goods growth on the lower Missouri. That's vital in order to continue to grow federal funding and all of the other, the work that we do with U.S. Army Corps and making sure that this is a vital transportation waterway, as we go forward. So with that, we wanted to continue to grow. We reopened a small bulk goods port just a few years ago. Since then, we've put almost $50 million in to continue to improve that barge and bulk goods facility, primarily for agriculture products. And this year, we did receive $7 million in order to continue to grow our dock facilities, and those are moving forward. That was a state grant. And then in preparation for what New Orleans and the St. Louis region, all of these other great investments, we're working kind of along similar timelines to New Orleans with our Missouri River Terminal, which is our larger facility. We currently have bridge and roadway construction underway, and we've acquired some additional acreage to bring the total acreage within our facility footprint to 500 acres. We have a $30 million bridge and roadway construction, which will allow this former remediated steel mill to come back to life as a true intermodal. And with that, we received a MARAD grant as well, and we've worked through the environmental, the NEPA, and we're ready now. We're in LOI phase with a progressive design build and an operations partner to start bringing that online. And at the same time, we are working our way through the STB process. We believe it's vital for Kansas City because of the rail connectivity and being at the crossroads of so much rail, similar to St. Louis, and the necessity and the partnership of our Class 1s. We're in the late stages of STB application to establish Port KC as a short line railroad here in the region so that we're able to continue to move our facilities as open yards and have those partnerships, be it any one of the Class 1s. We think that with Kansas City's kind of growth within the logistics partnerships, we really need to establish ourselves as an operational short line for this facility. And we're excited to time that where we believe we'll be getting, if not the waterborne side, the rail side coming online in late 25, early 26 as sort of the first phase of the Missouri River Terminal.
Brandy, what haven't we talked about that you want to be sure our audience knows about today?
I think one of the things that is most important when we think about the opportunities, both here in New Orleans, but the greater market going up the Mississippi, is the opportunity both by, we've talked a lot about container on barge, but also the rail connectivity, as John mentioned, is the intermodal options that really this gateway offers. Is we've looked at the last couple of years. I think we're going to continue to see challenges in the supply chain, whether it's congestion, natural disaster storms. The more that New Orleans, the gateway, can provide options on mode of transportation, we naturally have that. We can move that by river, we can move by road, we can move by rail. And I think all of the investments that we're each talking about today are providing that flexibility. I think that's what shippers are looking for. It takes a lot of education and working with the ocean carriers to provide pricing options to make those modes work. Advocacy on the grant side, with working with MARAD for the equipment for some of these facilities, but also for some of the operational costs to make some of these new services work. But it's, I think, increasingly important as we look at some of the challenges in supply chain and logistics today. But the more that we can build that flexibility into our terminals and into this gateway, I think it's going to make us even more competitive here in New Orleans, but certainly moving up through the Mississippi River and up into the heartland.
John, your turn to cover anything important about Port KC that we haven't touched on yet.
Yeah, I think as Brandy said, we all need to be sharing across the nation that the resiliency of our supply chain is critical, and that we have to continue to invest in the resiliency and the bifurcation and diversity of our supply chain. And there is really no better way than to look at our inland waterways as really a key component with what we're trying to do in making sure that our supply chain is diverse and accessible, and that bottlenecks in certain areas or disruptions in certain areas do not become too critical, that they can actually find alternative ways. As I look at what we've been able to do emerging kind of as the market really looked to shift from the just in time to just in case kind of model, Kansas City has accelerated. The last 3 years, we've been in the top 4 fastest growing metropolitan areas in new under roof construction for logistics, manufacturing. We have a $4 billion EV battery plant under construction, and we just cannot continue to have endless investments. I mean, we're spending billions in Missouri to rebuild I-70 from St. Louis to Kansas City, and that is desperately needed. But you can't continue to build capacity to absorb all of these TEU movements solely on truck or solely on rail. It has to be a true intermodal in the best sense of the word, and we need to build that. It takes years to build, but we're on the way. We continue to invest, and we're excited to continue to see it through, to be ready for whatever is ahead for our country and our world.
Dennis, your final thoughts for our audience.
Yeah, I'll continue on the same theme that John and Brandy brought up, because I think it's great, and that is resiliency. And at the federal level, that's the discussion right now. How can we keep supply chain disruption from occurring, or when it occurs, do we have another alternative to keep things moving and keep those containers rolling? And it's, I guess one thing that comes to mind is when the ship turns sideways, as in the Suez Canal, what do we do, right? The Baltimore Bridge recent occurrence, very unfortunate, but you see there's a lot of people working to shift products, shift cargoes and commodities and where they go. So one of the things we're working on here at the port, We have two river harbors, one north of and one south of Locks 27. Locks 27 is the busiest lock on the Mississippi River, and there's no way around it. If you are bringing goods up or down the river, you need to pass through that lock if it's going north of or south of here. And so with that, one of the things we're looking at now, we recently put in for a raised planning grant to look at offload capabilities there at our harbors and connecting the two by rail. And it incurs going across or through a levee. So that's not an easy thing to do, the permitting process associated with that, but at least with this planning idea now, in case there's an unplanned or even planned closure of that lock for any length of time, we now will have that ability to keep those commodities moving, shifting them from barge at the south end and taking them to the north end or vice versa. And so exactly what John and Brandy said, resiliency is key in this economy and in this market, and we need to keep those products moving. And, from the port perspective, I think all of us certainly think about that on a daily basis, both from a rail and truck standpoint, but certainly from the water standpoint as well.
Thank you, everyone. Today's discussion has been great. The investments being made and the connectivity and collaboration between your three ports will help support continued growth in both traditional barge traffic and container-on-barge services and intermodal operations in the Ag Coast of America. All of these efforts are helping to connect the dots between manufacturers, growers, markets, and shippers in ways that will grow cargo on the inland waterways. Thank you for sharing this with us. I'd also like to give a final thank you to our sponsors for FreightWeekSTL 2024. Their support makes it possible for us to continue to deliver the great content that is a hallmark of this annual conference. Our presenting sponsors are Ameren, Illinois Railroad Association, and Steadfast City. Our supporting sponsors are the Boeing Center, Contegra, Design 9, HNTB, the Hauser Group, and the Jerry Costello Group. Freight Week continues this afternoon. Our next session focuses on trends impacting agriculture and the barge industry. We hope you can join us. We also encourage you to share links to any of our Freight Week content with others who may be interested.